Okay, good morning. Okay, Mazel Tov again to myself and my Rebbitzin on the nuptials of our granddaughter Saraleya last night to a young man, Nathaniel Godel from Philly, New Jersey, a fine young man, Bukharian. It was a very interesting wedding, but a good time was had by all. And the Shir Shvel Yafa, they should be zeichet to be boinei bayis ne'em b'Yisrael l'shem ula tiferes. Okay, yesterday we began the sugya of Yayin Nesech, exactly when it becomes Yayin Nesech. So we illustrated yesterday that there is a gas at the top. That's where they do the crushing. It goes down into its sinor, a pipe, where it gets a little bit of the straining process takes place. It falls into an area called the girgusni, which we didn't identify yesterday, but it's a strainer. And from the girgusni, it goes into the bar. From the girgusni, it goes into the bar. And we want to know exactly which point in time becomes Yain Nesech. So initially, the Mishnah said it's over here. Rav Huna said that you can't go ahead and press with a guy over here, because if you press with a guy over here, it's already going to be Yain Nesech. So the Gemara said, Kan Mishnah Rishayna, Kan Mishnah Shniya. So that we saw the change, that it went from Dorchin, you could go ahead and press over here because it wasn't a problem with Yain Nesech. Of course, it's only a problem over here. Yet the latter Mishnah said, no, there is a problem over here. There's a problem over here because it's Yain Nesech over here, and went with that, what the Mishnah Achroina. That was what we saw yesterday, okay? And now, Bez Hashem, we're going to begin.
Don't we have the concept of the connection that?
Excellent point. Nitzuk, whether Nitzuk,
That's the word. I couldn't remember the word.
The Nitzuk is a chibur or not. Baruch, you're speaking like a lamdan. So, Bez Hashem, we're going to see on the Amid base why the Gemara is going to raise that as a question. Excellent, Baruch. Says the Mishnah. Says the Gemara. Nun vav min aleph, 4 lines from the top. Says ve'enos yayin nesech at shiyored the bar. It only becomes yayin nesech till it comes to the bar. Okay, and this is the Mishnah Rishayna, and we're discussing yayin nesech. Now we know that Maisa you can eat an achilas aroi as long as you don't have a gemar malacha. Once there's gemar malacha, you can't go ahead and eat until you go ahead and separate and tithe the crop. You will not be able to eat it all. But that's only after gemar malacha. So what's the gemar malacha of wine? At which point in time wine you're able to drink a shtiyas aroi, without the shtiyas keva, you can't drink, but shtiyas aroi you could. And then at which point in time does it stop? So this Mishnah is discussing Meiser, and we're going to ask a stira from Meiser to Avodah Zorah. But change the gersa to Tanan, Mishnah Perek Aleph, Mishnah Zayin and Meisris. Yayin, when is Yayin mechuyev in Meiser? Misha Yikpeh. At the time Yikpeh. Rashi, what is Yikpeh? Havigmar Malacha le'inyan Meiser li'osa b'shtiyas aroi. But it doesn't describe yet what Yikpeh is. It's just describing the halachic implications of Yikpeh, which at this point in time, no longer can you drink and shtiyas aroi because it's going ahead and being kaiveil in Meiser. Continues Rashi, Misha Yikpeh is lashon saf, lashon of floating, kimo kappa tehoima, that it floated, the Masech the Sukkah, shet sofin hachatzanim, the leads, the shells of the grapes, they're floating ala yayin, when it's noyach bebar, when it's at rest in the bar. So really what it is yikba is lashon of floating. You skim it off. So you're going to skim off the top. You're going to separate the chatzanim from the rest of the wine. At that point in time, there's gemar malacha. The Gemara is you have a kasha.
Right. Also, you asked them for tomorrow.
Le'inyan yayin nesech. Le'inyan yayin nesech. We say that's Mishiyar the bar. Over here, we're saying that what Mishayikba, when you go ahead and remove the top. So l'chayra amarav le'kasha ha Rabbi Akiva ha Rabbana. Now, loit Rava, clearly there's no distinction halachically between Yayin Nesech and Ma'aser. We're viewing them the same. So it's saying this stira is a mishnayis is a machlokas rishonim. That nan Yayin Mishiyar the bar. The Chachamim say Yayin Mishiyar the bar. Rabbi Akiva Mishiyikbeh. So the Mishnah in Meiser is going according to Rabbi Akiva. The Mishnah in Avodah Zorah is according to the Rabbanon. So machlokas tanoim. Iboilahu. When it says skimming, at which point of skimming from where? Kipui the bar. Are you speaking skimming off the bar? Or kipui the chavis? or later past that point in time, or kipui the chavias, the kipui of once it gets in the barrel. They would skim it a few times. So once they would skim it in the bar, and they would skim it again in the barrel. So when Rabbi Kiva says Ashayikbe, what is he speaking about? The Gemara Malacha Lemaisa. Is he speaking the what bar, or the speaking what Le'inyan, or it's speaking Le'inyan Avodah Zorah at a later point in time. So again, I think the shiloh over here is Linyan Maisa, because you look, the source is Perikal, giving a source of Maisa. The Tnan, or the Tnan, another Mishnah Aleph Perik Zayin, Yayin. When is Yayin the Gemara Malacha? Mishayikper, right? The Afal Pi Shekafa, and even though it is what in the bar, it is floating the stuff. Koilit min Hagase El Yoina, you still can go ahead and gather from the gas, the upper gas, umin hatzinor, and from that the pipe that goes through v'shaisa. So what do you see, fellas? What do you see? Look, our shaila was: is it after this process or during over here? So it says, what does the Mishnah say? Afa b'sheyikta, even though it's floating, right? Even though what, you'll be able to go ahead and be koilet from here and drink, even though it's floating. So what do you see? In other words, that even though there's Gemara Malacha over here, you'll be able to drink over here. So obviously, fellas, where's the keeper taken? Not placed later on after the chavias. It's taking place in the bar itself. So it can be a raya by the bar. It can be a raya that it takes place in the bar. Ravavi, we're holding Nun Vavam and Aleph. We're about 7 lines from the bottom. Shmami, no, we have a raya from here. When it speaks about skimming off the top, it's keep with the bar karmin. And Shmami, no, it's a clear raya. It's a clear raya. So again, just to reiterate, we're discussing at which point in time it becomes yayin nesech. We had machloikas mishnayos yesterday. Does it take place when it goes down to the bar, or does it take place earlier on when it's oozing out of the grapes at the top of the gas? Does it take place over there? The Mishnah Rishona said it takes place in the bar. The Mishnah Rishona said it takes place in the bar, and the Mishnah Achroina says no, it takes place earlier when it was still bad in the gas. And then we paskin like what, like Rabbi Rav Huna, who mentioned that. Nafkamina was, could you go ahead and trod upon it with a guy? According to the first Mishnah, you could, because there wasn't yayin nesech at a later point in time. According to the Mishnah, the latter opinion, no. You would be able to trod upon it with a guy, because why? Because at that point it's yayin nesech. We're asking a kasha. You're telling me that it's that le'inyan yayin nesech is mishiyarid lebar. We see that what le'inyan maisa is k'sheyikbeh. It's when you skim it off, which is a later time than skimming the bar, than going down to the bar. We're answering that going down to the bar is according to the Chachamim. Mishiyikbeh is according to what? Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva is the Tana of the Mishnah and Maisris, which says Mishiyikbeh, which is skimming off, and the Chachamim are the Tanakama of our Mishnah is who says Mishiyar the bar. We're asking a question: exactly when is the skimming taking place? Is it taking place when it's in the barrel already, or before that in the bar? We're bringing a raya that's in the bar. So for those people who came late, I just caught you up in the whole Gemara. Okay, so now for the Shmamina that what it's Mishiyik Balabar. For Hatani, for the Gemara, Reb Zvid, B'divrei Rabbi Oishia, Yayin Mishiyari Labar v'Yikpeh. We said it's Yayin Nesech, or the Chiv and Maisa guys, Mishiyari Labar. This is adding one more step. Not only Yarid Labar, but in addition, Yikpeh. Rabbi Akiva Oimeh, Mishiyashla B'Chavias, when you go ahead and put it into the barrels. So we have a machloikis between a stira between the Rabbanon and a stira according to Rabbi Akiva. The Rabbanon said earlier, Mishiyari Labar. Rabbi Akiva said, Mishiyikpeh. Now you're going ahead and taking it one step later. You're saying that no, like the Chachamim, it's not Mishiyari Labar. In addition to Yari Labar, you would need Yikpeh. According to Rabbi Akiva, It's not when not mishiyikma from the bar. It's when you put it actually in the barrels, which is the latest state. So l'chor you have a kasha on Rabbi Chachamim l'Chachamim and a kasha Rabbi Akiva on Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara answers tirtzenami lahach kamaisa hachi yesh yayi mishiyor lebar v'yikpeh Rabbi Akiva mishiyish lebechavius. So in other words, go ahead and change around the first part and don't say mishiyor lebar. Add mishiyor v'yikpeh. Like Rabbi Akiva, don't say mishiyikpeh. Say mishiyash lebechavius. Vel masis in the ktani. So that was Linyan Maisa, guys. So Lema Tilsa Tanoihi, guys. You have three Shitas Tanoim. Let's see Rashi. Nema Kiheche Diktani Le'inyan Nesech. Hachanami Sri Le'inyan Maisa. Upoligad Rabbanon Vada Rabbi Akiva. Who both the Rabbanon said besides Yori Lebo you need Yikpeh. According to Rabbi Akiva, you need Mishko to the barrels. Yayin Nesech, we said what? We said that when you goes to the bar. So Tilsa Tanoihi. Hanadi don Savar Mishiyori the bar. Ul-Rabbanon Mishiyikbe bebar. Ul-Rabbi Akiva Mishiyishla. So you have three different shitas. Okay, now the assumption is, fellas, that these were all speaking in the Gemara Malacha of Maisa, who are din, it would be applied to what? The halacha of what? Of Yayin Nesech. So you'd have three shitas. Again, we have the Chacham say Yayin Nesech Mishiyori the bar. That's a given. Then we went ahead and we went to the Mishnayos in Masechta Meiser, and we added on two different shitas. We added on the shita Mishiyori Bar V'Yikpeh, and we added on going down to the barrel. So if the halacha of Yayin Nesech and Meiser are synonymous, then you have three shitas. Ar Chachamim Yayin Nesech Mishiyori the Bar. Maisa, the Chachamim in Maisa Mishiyot Baviyekba, and Rabbi Akiva, what? When Mishiyash the Chavius, when you go to the barrels. That's what the Gemara wants to assume. Says the Gemara, Loi. Shiny Yayin Nesech de Achmir Barabanan. Yayin Nesech is different. The Chachamim more Machmir, and therefore, at an earlier state, it became Yayin Nesech, but the Inyan Maisa, it will be later. Our Chachamim say Mishiyori lebar, Le'inyan Maisa Mishiyori lebar v'yikpeh. Okay, that would be the way to go ahead and make that distinction. Now, however, going back above, guys, going back 5 lines down, for Tayin Yayin Mishiyikpeh, that's not Yori lebar. Amarav leKasha HaRabbi Akiva HaRabbanon. Now, that Mishnah Mishiyikpeh speaking by Meiser, Rabbi Rava did not make a distinction between Yayin Nesech and Meiser. He said the din is synonymous. What's the raya? He said the din is synonymous. He said it's contingent upon what? A machlokes tanoim. Our Mishnah here is the Rabbanon. The Mishnah in Maisa is Rabbi Akiva. So what do you see? We see from this Rava's teretz, he's not making a distinction between the two. He's saying they're exactly the same. One is according to Rabbanon, one's according to Rabbi Akiva. So now you can't go ahead and give the teretz like Rava that you machmir by Yayin Nesech at an earlier state to make it what? It's not possible. So Fred Gemara, Shani the Machmir Barabanan, Amid Beis, Ul Rava the Shani La, and Rava who did not make a distinction. How do you know he didn't make a distinction? Because look at the way he answered the kasha, guys. He said one's one shita, one's the other shita, but he didn't make a distinction, which he could have. He could have easily said, "What are you mixing up the two? One is speaking Limayin Nesech, one's speaking Limaisa." He didn't make that distinction. So obviously, what? It's the same. If it's the same, how does he answer the three shitas? And Achinami says the Gemara, the Mukila Betilsa Tanoi says Machlokes Tanoim. The Mishnah, our Mishnah is speaking of Chachamim, who says the share is Mishiyori Lebar. That's when it's Yayin Nesech. And according to the Rabbanon in the Mishnah Maisa, it won't be Yayin Nesech until Mishiyori Le'Yekbeh. And according to what the third sheet of Rabbi Akiva, it will only be when you lower it into the Chavias. Okay. Now, Baruch asked the Gavaldiga Kasha, guys. This is getting a little more clarity than yesterday. I wonder if I can put this online. You know what? Yesterday we were discussing Machlokes was went over here, right? That over here it gets Mishri Shina. It's only Yayin Nesech when it gets to here to the bar. This is the bar down here. Right? It says bar. So, and we concluded that no, it's Yayin Esach over here. This is the Mishnah Achrayna. That's why you can't trot together. So now wine goes down. It goes into a pipe. There's a lot of sediments lost in the pipe. It goes into an area which we haven't discussed yet called the Girgusni, which basically was a strainer. It went from the Girgusni into the bar. Okay? Now, Baruch wanted to know there's something called nitzuk. In other words, if you have a connection, right? Why, even if it's not Yayin Esach over here, if it's Yayin Esach down here, it should be connected, correct? That's what your problem was. Okay, so we're going to discuss that, guys. So you have an idea what's going on over here. This is okay. I should have done that yesterday, but okay, what can you do? Now, Amar Rav Huna, Lo shanu elishli hichzer girgusni legas. We did not learn that it's in the bar, it's asar, and the rest is muta. That's only if what? The girgusni, right? If the girgusni does not return it back to the gas. Avol hichzer girgusni legas asar. Now, so here's the shaila. If the girgusni is going to go ahead and return it to the gas, correct? Then it's going to be asar up here. Good. Now, what made the girgusni asar? You know, you want to say the following. You want to make a connection from here to here. What's the connection from here to here? The connection to the bar. Lo shanu mishiyarid lebar. That guy's at this area, fellas. It's Yayin Esach. Ella, if what? If the girgusni doesn't go back to here. But if the girgusni would go back to here, then what? The whole thing would be Yayin Esach. Fred the Gemara lays, how did this over here, the girgusni, become Yayin Esach? It must be the connection, the nitzuk going from here to here. It must be that's the connection. Fred the Gemara, girgusni gufa, the girgusni itself, the maika mitzra. Where does it become asar? Because everyone seems to be moida. It's only Yayin Esach over here, according to the Mishnah Rishayna. Benitzuk, it's what? The nitzuk. Nitzuk, guys, think of a waterfall, that the water at the bottom is connected to the water at the top through the flow. So it's flowing from here to here. Once it gets to here, it's Yayin Esach, and over here it's going to connect. Shmamina, nitzuk chibur. Shmamina, you could be pushed from here. That nitzuk is a connection. Now, what's the problem with that? It says Rashi, Shmamina nitzuk chibur, ulakaman b'seiches apoyol pligiba. It's going to be what? A machlokes, right? Right. It's going to be asa. Good. It's going to be asa. Guys, you good? In other words, that's a machlokes later on. It's a machlokes later on. Why are you saying what? Why are you telling me that it's the girgusni to the gas? Why are you telling me that? The girgusni itself is only because it's connected to the bar. And there's a machlokes later on whether nitzuk is a chibur or not. Shmami, no, when you're saying it is a fait accompli, that if it's connected, it's going to be Yayin Esach at an earlier state, it must be it's a chibur. So you're being nichnas into a machlokes. Meaning, why does the man the Omo over there do what's over here if that's the case? That's the Gemara's kasha. What is the Gemara doing who argues and says it's not a chibur? If you're telling me this din, then what do you do with that? Yes, Harold.
Wasn't Rav Huna before say the only reason we don't connect it was because of pickpook? It was sealed, it was closed.
We're going according to the opinion that what Rav Huna, you don't need that okimta anymore, because once Rav Huna said kan Mishnah Rishayna, Mishnah Achrayna, the Mishnah Achrayna, you were not able to go ahead. You didn't need that anymore, Hesh, because it's asab. Why? Because at an earlier time, not when we are at the bar. This whole Gemara Hesh is going on our Mishnah. Rav Huna is speaking about the Mishnah Achrayna, and once once after Rav Huna Hesh, you don't need the Mishnah Kuka anymore. You don't need to do Kimta anymore. Once we have the Mishnah Achrayna, this is going to Mishnah Rishayna. You good?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So this is going to the Mishnah Rishayna. Now, okay. So and for the Gemara, Kidetani Reb Chia shepichisasoi tzluchisoi, that it rose to the tzluchisoi hachanami, where Reb Chia is going to give that teretz later on. Daf Yomi Ayin Beis Amid Beis Hachanami shepichisasei boiroi. What are we speaking about? Says Rashi, guys. Shepichisasei boiroi. Shenismale habar. The bar got filled with wine. At shegia yayin, till the yayin reaches the tafach b'shuli hagergusni, and it's touching the bottom of the gergusni. Good. In other words, fellas, there is no nitzuk. Fellas, it's geschmack. Here's what it's speaking about. Take a look at the picture. This bar is so full of wine that the gergusni, this touching the gergusni. So therefore, the gergusni is yayin esech, not because of nitzuk, but the gergusni is yayin esech what? Because of what? Of its touching that's in the bar, but there's no nitzuk. Okay, now Baruch asked the kasha. He didn't ask it this way. He asked it another way. Taisus asked the kasha. Guys, look at Taisus. You see the big Taisus gergusni? I thought since we have a lot of time today, we can go through the whole Taisus. What do you think? I know you're smiling because you know I'm lying. Anyway,
I removed the question.
you removed the question. Very good. Okay, let's see the Taisus gergusni. Gergufni gufa b'may mitzvah b'nitzuk shmamina nitzuk chibur. So we were speaking about the gergusni to the bar. V'im taimar im kain. If you're telling me nitzuk sechibur, mashe begas hayalonu lesser mitam nitzuk. Pirish. If you're telling me nitzuk is a chibur, then this should have been also all along. Because, guys, it's going to be connected to the bar. You're going to have a flow going from here all the way to here. So even like the Mishnah Rishayna, it should be usher over here. Yet in the Mishnah Rishayna, you said you could be darach with a guy over here, right? Baruch, that was your question. You want to go back, nitzuk, all the way back over here, right? You want to go all the way back. So Frek Taisis, why don't you just say from over here to here? Say the gas is usher because of this, the connection there. V'yeshleimar, the shiny hacha, have a nitzuk bar nitzuk. It's a secondary connection. The migas legegusni have a nitzuk echad, umegusni lebar nitzuk sheni. Guys, from the gas, this is one, and this is two. So nitzuk chibur, even when we say nitzuk chibur, it's one connection. Over here, you're gonna have two connections. From here to here is one, and from here to here is two. And here there is two. So again, that we don't say. That's the first teretz, right? You don't say that. When we come posku harivon, the Rivan paskins v'harashbam v'rbeinu tam b'shem Rashi that fiul man diyama in nitzach chibur mikol makam nitzur bar nitzach kihacha ein a chibur. So be one good teretz, guys, right? Even if you say nitzach is a chibur, that's only one nitzach, one connection, but two not. Go down a little bit. You see, it has parentheses v'nosan l'yayin shebechavius. Right underneath it says v'harira memram hayedoiche rayazu ki la'olam eim lecha nitzuk bar nitzuk chibur. I'd say the double connection is a connection. V'hodlo yasrinan hacha yayin shebegas. So why the yayin begas over here? Why is it not yayin esech b'shem nitzuk? Hainu taima the mashe begas ein a nikra adayin yayin vein a nechshav ela kemaya ba'alma. Right, guys, you hear this? Guys, look at the chart. Look at the picture. Really, this will be a connection, and really over here should be yayin esech. At this point in time, guys, it's not considered yayin. This point in time, it's considered water. So you are connected. From here to here is one connection. From here to here is another connection. But that connection from here to here is connecting to water or liquid. It's not connecting to yayin. Okay, so I think we did enough of the Taisus. Now, again, I wanted to touch upon a little of your side. You get a little feel because you have to deal with the nitzuk Inyan over here. There's a reason these are short bletta, guys. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, but it's Inyan Tumah V'Taira and nitzuk. Okay, says the Gemara. Hahu Yenuka, listen to this. There was a kid, the Tana Avodas Kechavim b'Sheish Shnei. He learned Avodah Zorah, guys, b'Sheish Shnei when he was 6 years old. Hesh, your favorite Masechta guy. Hesh, he knew this at 6. At 6 years old, he knew it. And they asked him Shilas. Boy, they asked this kid.
I didn't know it at 60.
What?
I didn't know it at 60.
I got you. But anyway, so Boy Mine, Mahu lidroich im oivik yechavim begas. What's the halacha or what of? Now, fellas, like the Mishnah Rishayna, yes. Like the Mishnah Achrayna, no. Right? So Mahu lidroich im oivik begas, amalahu darchim oivik yechavim begas. You could. Now, if he learned Avodah Zorah, he should know that you can't. Guys, we know you can't. Why? Because it's at that point in time, it's considered Yayin Esech. So you won't be able to be direct with the guy. I become a Nasech biyodei. The guy goes ahead. Now, Pashas is stamping it with your feet, but he's taking it with his hands. Like we spoke at earlier. They would re-crush it. They would take it and re-crush it again. So, right? Says Gemara, you know what it's speaking about? It's Sayrana Luhuli Yodei. They tied his hands. So since they tied his hands, he wasn't touching the wine. Since he wasn't touching the wine, it's not a Yayin Esech problem. Fred Gemara v'kamenasech beregel. What are you talking about? He's not touching it. He's touching him with his feet. And for the Gemara, nisach the regel loishmei nisach. Touching with your feet is loishmei nisach, and therefore what? It's not a problem. So Baruch Hashem.